Welcome to Earthempaths.
Claudia and Christine of Earth Empaths, and we're here today to present a PowerPoint we've been working on for several months. I want to give a shout out to Hazel, Marin, Lori, Ida, and the others that helped do some of the research and brought some of the images and different points we're going to be discussing today. And I just wanted to take a minute, Claudia, to settle in here and, reintroduce ourselves and why we are Earth Empaths and why we do the work we do and why is it important, or do we feel it's important to be speaking our truth. And for myself, I just want to make a really quick, I learned through this process of getting over my shyness and getting over my hesitation, getting over my insecurities, reclaiming pieces of myself, that to stand in one's sovereignty or to stand in one's truth is truly a miraculous journey. And so for me, it's been the first time I ever did anything was I was so nervous, and I felt like the repercussions that I had to become the truth I'm speaking. That's the power in it. And what you realize as a being is that when you speak from truth, truth will set you free. It does set you free. And if there's anything remaining in you that's keeping you from that soul sovereignty, it'll come up. But one should celebrate that. For that's where we get to, to do the inner work that we need to do. So we start to move out of our shadow selves ourselves, and we can really, really pour forth from within. This is what it's all about. So we're going to talk about law today, the criminal legal system, natural law, and I'll turn it over to you for a second, Claudia, just because I know how deeply this is moving within you.
I'm not even sure I have anything to add because you said it all. I want to say dishonesty for me personally has always been a deal breaker. I could have a years-long friendship with somebody. If I found out they lied to me, that was it, end of story.
Interesting. Unless that person, for me, realizes that has their own realization that by lying to somebody, they've created this field of distrust. And it's true. Once distrust comes into a relationship, you can't just push it under the rug. It needs to.
No, exactly.
Right? So, and that what I would say, it always starts in the personal.
It does, yeah.
Right?
It moves from inside outwards, not the other way around.
Yeah. So somebody has a true moment of their own awakening, myself, right? Little fibs or little things that I've said in the past, like when I have to address them and readdress them, I will to the person, Unfortunately, we as humans in our relationships have forgotten to be able to do that. And that's humility.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And
whatever it is.
Well, to be able to say I'm wrong and I really did wrong and I really did harm and I really did do something that I need to address.
Yeah, you face it.
And, that can be on a daily basis, right? Mm-hmm. Just the other day I found myself in a state of irritation. And I said things that were not mean or they weren't to do harm, but they were like, whoa, and just, big deep breath and go, okay, I don't choose to be that way. To me, that becomes that choice part of sovereignty, and it's like awareness factor. So I think that's why we do what we do. I think,
And I also think, now that you've brought it up, the only way anyone can get over the incredible amount of mind control bombarding everyone, every living being on this planet, is by being absolutely ruthlessly honest.
exactly.
The excuse, oh, I was made to say it, I was made to do it, it was the mind control, it was the targeting. People, it doesn't cut anymore.
No, no.
You
Actually,
are responsible. No matter who you are, no matter what you do, you are responsible. It's not the mind controller. It's not the people who switch on and off buttons for mind control or however they do it. These are none of your concern. At the end of the day, it's how you fare, how you act. And if you don't stand in truth, you don't stand a chance getting out of this matrix, getting out of this illusion.
well,
And it's painful. It's dirty. I mean, look in the mirror and say, fuck, I had my child vaccinated. I caused harm to the one I love more than anything in the world. Yeah, that's painful.
yeah,
But you won't grow until you face everything you've ever done.
exactly. Yeah, even that, I mean, somebody wrote on comment on one of our YouTubes with Lily, and where we're really talking about, a radical responsibility. And it's a mindset. It's like when you get to the place and say, I accept that everything that's happening to me, I am responsible for it. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't bad people and horrific things being done, right? Everything from ritualistic murder to psychotropic, harassment. And some people I know suffer from it. I mean, I have dear friends. They suffer greatly. But you and I, we've worked with people along that line. And, it's like what you find out with a person that is continuously harassed, okay? And I know they suffer. It's painful. But I think we noticed a pattern, which is the first thing they do within that person is they set up victim mentality, victim meme, victim mind. Okay, that says I can't get out of this. I am the victim of this.
And it will continue as long as they continue their victimhood. The targeting and the abuse will continue.
Right. And then the other inverse side of it is, and I have a very dear friend, somebody I spent some time with when I was in Ecuador, and he's a beautiful soul, right? And he was one of the first harassed people on the planet, okay? And I mean, he lost his family, he lost his wife, he lost his livelihood, he lost his mind practically, right? But the being that's still there right now, that's come back in, is extraordinary. Mm-hmm. All right? Because he had to fight this battle. I don't know why for his soul. So I guess, I don't know, we're kind of going off track here, but I find like it's an important aspect of why you and I share what we share on our journey. And so today we're going to talk about the criminal legal system and natural law. Two different things completely. We would like to try to diffuse some of the confusion, the purposeful confusion within what most people think they obey the law through the legal system. It's going to be further from the truth.
Yep.
So here is our first slide on our PowerPoint, and named Road to Freedom, We the Sovereign People, Moving Out of Ignorance into Knowledge. A lot of people speak about freedom. A lot of people say sovereign. I think you just gave a nice little writing about the use of the word sovereignty, Claudia.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
How it's become a word out there. And maybe you just want to speak a little bit. And
Okay, it looks basically, from what I've seen, especially in the alternative media, it looks like, it has become the buzzword because everyone uses it. And it very often it's quite clear from the context that most people don't have a clue how far you have to go to, be truly sovereign. it means total freedom. That means you can no longer depend on the governmental system to, for example, if you have children, you cannot send them to school. You cannot use the medical system that one day you might have been insured to use, because you don't do insurance, because you don't want to give away your liability, since your liability is your power.
Wow. Can I ask you to speak to that exactly? Because you see, we think of liability as something to our detriment.
Yes, most people do. Like, say, if many people I've met over the years actually are of the opinion that it doesn't matter if they get into a car crash, because the insurance will cover it.
Right.
Especially if they have this fully comprehensive insurance.
Okay.
And I've always wondered, and very often asked as well, like, how would you cope with the personal responsibility? If you cause a car crash and somebody dies, that means you're responsible for their death.
Right.
Oh, but the insurance covers it. Well, the insurance might cover the finance side of it, and anything to do with finance is fake anyway. It will most certainly not cover your guilt, and whether you feel guilty or not, you are guilty for taking someone's life.
Right.
So isn't it that much more freedom-inducing if you know of your responsibility, and therefore you have the power to prevent any disaster that makes you guilty?
Wow. It's really profound. And I'm just going to, not to labor the point too much, but it is an aspect of insurance and the way the game's played within that legal system that somehow your liability is eradicated. And it isn't ever. It can't be. And, even though I have a thing about guilt and all of that, it's the word of responsibility. Just because you carry, the idea embedded behind insurance is not just the financial liability, is that most people buy into it, thinking that they have now eradicated responsibility. But it's even inverse in that. If you don't have insurance out there in the world, you are irresponsible. You see, they play these games with us, right? And I don't go into my personal story, but it's really bears pondering. It bears the weight of truth that one sit there and take this in and really look at it themselves. Neither Claudia nor I are experts, authorities, or anything.
Hell no.
I know, darling. And yet, within it, when you really start to get down into the finer layers, and this is what we're going to do a little bit today, of a system that we have given our power over to. So anyways, that said, there we go. So yes, moving out of ignorance into knowledge, and knowledge is power. And then let me figure out here how to go to the next one. Okay. All right. So just a graphic. We won't say much here, but justice is not blind. Open your eyes. All right. So when they say justice is blind, it has a double entendre of meaning, right? Justice is simply justice when it's based in truth, right? It's the what isness of a fact.
Yes, and the legal system has none of that.
Exactly. So
absolutely zero.
Exactly. So when they say, and that's why I made this slide, it's like justice is not blind. It is not blind because you are truth and you are the justice. You have to open your eyes to understand that, though. As long as you're looking to somebody else, some authority outside yourself that's going to tell you that, then you are not actually in a justice system. And I don't care where on the planet we're standing, in what country. We're going to talk probably more today about the United States system, the Admiralty Law, British, and tied to the Vatican. But it doesn't matter where you are in the world. All the governments and all the legal systems pretty much operate under the same thing.
Yep.
Okay, so right now we're going to talk a little bit about definition of terms, right? And the tyranny of legalese is going to be exposed, right? So what we need to understand is we all use language. The legal system uses specific language, right? Most of it's so convoluted in the way they write it that you can't even understand it anyways.
No, and then add that many, many words that the legalese has hijacked mean something completely different, even though they sound identical to, well, mostly to English, but it is prevalent in the languages as well.
Yes. So really, go ahead, I'm sorry.
We'll shortly give some examples.
Okay, so really what we would like to try to do with this PowerPoint, and the reason behind putting this together was to bring this forward, perhaps in a simplistic way, right? To bottom line it, okay? Anything that is authority outside of yourself, you are not in freedom and you are not in sovereignty. And we have a very small group of people on this planet. They're within the governments, within the religions. It's an elite group of personages, okay? These are image makers. They are not people. They are image makers, and they have taken an unlimited amount of power over people. This is what we're really confronting here. This isn't something, woo-woo conspiracy. This is a reality that we're actually immersed in. So let's question everything. Just, again, underline it, the criminal legal system. The system itself, operating in our courts and our governments and our religion, is acting as criminals. They are outside the law. Maybe you want to just give up. We're going to talk about natural law, Claudia, but maybe you want to just give a little bit on what is law.
Well, law is that which cannot be changed. It's immutable. For example, if you cause something, you're going to have to deal with the effect. Mm-hmm. Whether it's instant or in a few years or in hundreds of years, it doesn't matter, because time as such, as we know it, is an illusion anyway. Mm-hmm. You cause something, you're going to deal with the effect of that cause. That's an immutable law. Mm-hmm. No legal system in the world can change that, even though they make you believe that they stand above you and they are not subject to those laws.
Mm-hmm. Right. So they call them laws, and I like the way that they call it the shield of law in the name of justice, right? That is probably the greatest lie we're dealing with. It's a cover-up of cover-ups. And, we'll talk about it a little bit in a little more depth here. So when we're looking at terms, right, there is a purposeful ambiguity of terms. Now, a person that really is versed in the law, right, or in the legal system will know that this was done on purpose, right? This is not some random thing that just developed over time and, we developed all these laws and, now it's the way it is and, oh, well, what can we do about it thing. This was done on purpose, right? So you want to talk about this a little bit, Claudia, the difference between Black's dictionary and the normal common English dictionary?
Mm-hmm. Yes, why not? I call Black's dictionary actually the grimoire, because it is basically a manual to use black magic through the use of words, otherwise known as legalese. Your normal dictionary tells you that a person is a human being, generally. Whereas in Black's dictionary, which applies to the legal system, a person is something like a human being, but not a human being, because Black's actually does not have a definition for human being. So a person is, according to Black's dictionary, a person is always a commercial entity. It can be called legal, person. It can be called legal entity, legal fiction. It's somebody who is dead, because in this legal system, which is all about commercial Admiralty Law, the law of the sea, you don't deal with people or human beings, you deal with ships. So everything is seen from a commercial point of view, and human beings have no place in commerce.
Right. Because they were being traded, right, as chattel.
Mm-hmm.
We are resources. We are human resources to be bought and sold and used, and we'll get into that a bit deeper here. So it's really important to understand this, that really what we're dealing with in the legalese system is commerce, the buying and selling of souls.
Yes, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah. This is really important that people sit with this. I really feel it strongly. We can gloss over a lot of things in our world, but when you really dive into this area, you really start to understand what's been going on for a long time and how it's been set up. And this traces back quite a few thousand years.
Oh, yes. And that's why, it's safe to say that we are living in a satanic realm.
Right.
Completely and absolutely, until we get out of it.
Yeah.
And we cannot get out of it until we truly comprehend what's been going on.
Right. And we can't get out of it by making different laws either. Or even going against.
The laws are there. That's all we need to know.
Say that again.
The laws, the real laws, are there in place. You cannot break them because they're immutable. You don't need regulations, statute, rules.
Exactly. That's a very hard thing for a lot of people to start to think about, but I encourage that you do. I encourage anybody hearing this that you really think about a world without statutes, laws, and our rules. So let's move into this, all right? Okay, so what we're going to look at in some brief or some depth, I'm not sure where we'll go, but everything the way it's set up, I don't care where you are again, all right, is that you need registration, birth, cars, property.
Let me jump in here. You don't need it. You are made to believe that you need it.
Exactly. And I mean, unfortunately, because most of us have gotten trapped into that, our births are registered, our cars are registered, our houses are registered, or we ask for permits. We need permits to go fishing. I'm not speaking, okay, I won't use the word need, okay. We are entrained to believe that we need registration and permits. Permits to fish, permits to walk on the street sometimes, permits to put a sign up, permits to gather. All of these things have been used to restrict our freedoms. And yet we don't question them.
Exactly.
All right. So I'm just going to read this and then you want to say something. It's just like demanding that a fictional entity, we'll talk about that, whom for whatever reason you deem is above you. Okay. So a judge, a priest, a cop, anybody is a fictional entity. It's a created entity. It's not a living, breathing human being. You're dealing with an entity. And it takes ownership of what is yours in order to trade internationally for its own benefit. One has to, we'll get into this a little bit deeper, all right? I won't go into it right now because we do have slides that way. Okay? All of these things. I want to talk more, but I'm going to leave it at that for right now because, I could go on and on. But, just as examples of how this affects everything we do in our lives.
Yep.
Okay. So here we are again, back to this, all right? A human being, a legal entity. If you want to just sit here with yourself, are you person one or are you person two? And this is a lot. These are, we can bring all these things forward. But when you're sitting here in your own consciousness, making choices for yourself, every second of your life, where are you choosing to be? So I think you've already covered some of this, Claudia. You want to look it over for a second?
Yes, we have. I mean, I think that's that pretty much stands out. That Black's Law, the grimoire, does not have a definition for human being, which means the legal system does not deal with human beings. Well, what are you? You are not a person. You're not artificial. Let that sink in. They don't see you as someone, as a souled being. SOULED. Just clear here.
Right. That's even, see, this is the subtle ways that, like, back in another slide, we had the soul corporation, SOLE, right? So, the play on words.
It's everywhere. I mean, it's and from every angle. You not only have many words that have two entirely different meanings, especially with regard to legalese, but you also have anagrams. You have phonetics, which is absolutely huge. I mean, read some of Kate of Gaia's stuff, and you'll start thinking of every single word you use, and then think twice before you use it, because the phonetic, the sound of it is likely to show something completely different than what you intended to.
Exactly. This is important. Even like you catching me on using the word need. See, these things are built into our language. And when we don't stop, in the moment that we're speaking, when we're not aware of what we're saying in a conscious manner, it's huge. Yeah, Kate of Gaia and Colin Smith. I mean, they both do a really great job of, bringing this forward. And, this is another awakening. This is another layers of our awakening. This is a reality, people. A reality. This is I in reality. I am real. Right? And we to really start to understand that. Anyway, it's powerful. All right. So, a fictitious legal entity called a person, and this is from hennymacaus.com, right? And I don't know if I want to read this. It can leave it up on the screen for a moment, even. But this is a quote that is attributed to the Rothschild agent, Colonel Edward House. Okay? This is what they're actually saying, all right? And there are plenty of examples of this, all right? There's so many people that have done such a good research in bringing up what is the elite, okay? Maybe we talk about that for a moment. Who are these elite? That's even a misnomer of a word, right? They are those that have put themselves in positions of power over, period. They have, through a process of centuries of time, invested their lifeblood energy into creating a system where they are the beneficiaries of our life, of our energy. And they know exactly what they are doing, and they've always known what they are doing. And when you say, Claudia, that it's like satanistic, well, that is probably the best word that one can put upon it.
Well, that's whom they give their soul over for, maybe a few years while they are on this planet in a meat suit, to live out their greed. It really is nothing else. And they're going to be, they have to pay for it because, balance is another law. Yeah. And yes, they are the fraudsters because they didn't get into power genuinely. They got into power through deception, through cheating, through lying, through murdering, and whatever other inconceivable acts you cannot imagine. That's how they get power.
Right. So underline that, people that are listening right now, because I'm speaking to, we are the people. We are people, living human beings. This is very difficult for the full realization to come forward that this is how the world is operated, because we're still immersed in an illusion that everything is going to be okay, that there's some good people out there that are going to take care of us, that somehow the system's going to change. Well, it's not.
No way. No,
Okay.
there will be no outside savior.
No, and I'm going to read the bottom line of this quote without realizing it. Listen, okay? I mean, this is like, I really want to say, listen to what they say to each other. Find their books, find their own writing. So this is what they said, without realizing it. You see, without even realizing it, this is what happened. Every American will insure us for any loss we may incur. And in this manner, every American will unknowingly be our servant, however begrudgingly. The people will become helpless and without any hope for their redemption. And we will employ the high office of the president of our dummy corporation to foment this plot against America.
And I would like to add here, this is not just against America, okay? This is against all the people of this world.
Exactly. And it is in America, and we'll get into how America operates, how the UK operates, how the trust was set up to make this happen. It's just so vital in my mind and in my heart that people that really get this information is, as long as we're looking to these people that are wearing suits and hats and ties and they smile so nicely and they pat children on the head, don't be fooled. Okay, just real briefly here. Well, you and I had a little discussion on this slide the other day, right, Claudia?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, because it's a little, see here, here we go. We're kind of moving between things, right? Common law, legalese. But basically for me, as there is law, as you said, it's immutable law. Law operates with or without people, with or without statures, with or without anything. It doesn't need anything. And yet within community, things happen. And how did we, the people, come to terms with things that weren't working for let's say, the greater good or the good of the tribe or whatever? We had tribal councils. And even the Constitution of the United States, I mean, we set up for a jury of your peers. Now that's all been corrupted now. But if anybody, had an error to redress or something, you went before your people. And there was always common law, was common sense, right? You killed your neighbor's cow, right? So your peers would get together and say, okay, John, pay your neighbor for the cow. I mean, it's that simple. But this is just like, this is hard for us because we're used to these laws now.
Well, it's doubly hard because everything has become so utterly convoluted. You enter a court, and I would advise anyone not ever to do so, because if you enter a court, you're automatically the trustee. You have the administrator, which is the judge, and you have the beneficiary, which is the crown. So that leaves you to be the trustee, which is why, so many people are sent to jail. Mm-hmm. The trustee has to do what the beneficiary wants, and the administrator has to decide whether the beneficiary has a point or not. And the administrator is always on the side of the beneficiary because the administrator gets paid by the crown.
Right, exactly. And as anybody knows that's dealt with any law system to any extent at all, there really is nothing called justice there. There isn't.
No, it's a joke at best.
Yeah, and yeah, and even worse now. But see, this is the thing again, embedded within the mind structure, within these false mind loops, is that most people still believe that, let's just say, I live in Mexico. Most people think that the Mexican law system is corrupt, and they think the U.S. law system is just.
Right.
It's not that way. Actually, the Mexican law system is more just than the American one. Why? because it's corrupt from the top to the bottom. All right? That means the man on the bottom can get into the corrupt system just as the man at the top. Where in the US, it's only the man at the top. You know, so I mean, that's really a converse way of saying something, but it's a truth, right?
Yeah.
So it's like the mind washing of those that live in this, you know, the US or the UK or all these places that are ruled by the crown, you know, that they're actually think that they believe that they live in a just system. And they're afraid of countries where they see that there's corruption. It's like to throw that veil off. The United States of America is one of the most corrupt countries operating on the planet. It is so criminal. And it's just body wash. It's just fake body wash and perfume. You just scratch the surface a little bit, people. You'll see.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, now we're going to get into something. Now, I'm going to say right here, I'm not an expert on any of this. I did spend a lot of time listening to videos and reading, and I saw enough that I don't have any doubt that this is true. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about Rome, because all roads lead to Rome, right? And we're living in a system based on Roman law.
Yes, based on ancient Roman law.
Right. Right. And so what we're saying is there's a body of a law imposed by the state as opposed to moral law. Every human being that isn't completely, you know, soul dead right now knows what moral law is. They live it. It's inside of you. You know when you're doing something right or wrong. You know when you're harming and you're not harming. You know this. This is something that you have to bring up from inside yourself.
Yes, that's where natural law comes down to, really. The only thing you're not allowed is to steal. If you steal, then all bets are off, because that is wrong. And it doesn't matter what you steal. You know, you can steal somebody's life by murdering them. You can steal somebody's free will by coercing them, which, you know, the police do day in, day out, 8-10 hours a day.
Mm-hmm. And another way of, I think I actually might have moved that, you know, on that next slide we're coming up to, is that, you know, do not steal, do no harm. And they go hand in hand. You're saying the same thing, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't need somebody outside of me to tell me if I've done harm or not.
Exactly.
Right? I know it. You know, and that comes back to that aspect of liability again, doesn't it?
Yes.
Right? Because
absolutely, yes.
Right.
And it's also, I mean, people in the system, especially the legal system, they don't think anything of harming or getting others to harm other people, because the people to them are chattel, dead entities.
Mm-hmm.
But it does not, you know, that thought does not exempt them from the law.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of them, you know, especially, I mean, when you look at the violence a police officer all over the Western world are exercising at the moment, they act as if they were exempt from having to do right,
mm-hmm.
i.e. to not steal. They are not. They're going to have to face what they did and what they are doing every day.
Yes, and as you said, it may be tomorrow, it could be weeks, months, years, lifetimes even. But everything has an effect. Every cause has an effect. And if you're causing harm, you're going to be at the effect of it. I mean, there's just no way around that. And it's like sitting with that also. That's another one of those like bottom line things, you know, sit with that. What does that mean? You don't get off. I mean, you vaccinated your child because somebody told you to. Still your responsibility for that decision. And, you know, I'm not even going to say it's not, I wouldn't even pass judgment myself on somebody that vaccinates. If they did all their research, if they made an informed choice.
it's not up to us to judge anything what anyone else does.
No. Right, exactly.
We just, we know that if they do wrong, whether they do it intentionally or not, they're going to have to face the consequences. It doesn't matter.
Right. Exactly. And there's another little piece to this, is that when you do harm to yourself or when you do harm to another, you do harm to all.
Yep.
And that takes a bit of getting there to really know that. And I don't mean know it in the logical way, but to know it within yourself. That's when we're going to get into that too in a little bit too, of what it really means to hold these truths to be self-evident.
Mm-hmm.
So here again, this is a word that I have the hardest time not using, is the understand how that is. Right? And sometimes I will use it very consciously, but very rarely, because to understand means to stand under authority. And I would like you to say something about a human being inhabits a place.
Yes. A person, i.e. the fictional entity or legal fiction, your name in capital letters, basically, which you are not allowed to use anyway, but we'll get to that. Only a legal entity can reside at an address. A human being inhabits a place. That's the difference in legalese, which is why if you are unfortunate enough to end up in a court or you get stopped by a cop, you very often ask what your place of residence is.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you are a human being, you do not have a residence.
Right.
That's all there is to it.
Right. So, yeah. So that's capturing you in the residency of your box, basically.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Exactly. So checking it into the spiritual realm, a human being inhabits a place. Well, when you come to that place within you, right? And, something that woke me up a long time ago was the ground you walk on is holy. So when you become that divine being, human being inhabiting yourself, your holy vessel, that's what I inhabit here. And I have a place. Wherever I am is where I inhabit.
Yep.
And exactly. It is sacred. It is not owned by anyone or anything or any belief or any law. Because I'm inside inhabiting myself. And these are, again, they're words to really think about, as is the word anarchy. Okay.
Yes, and there's also this thing that most people do not see, that even the legal system is very dark, but nevertheless based on spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything comes down to that.
Yes.
That's why, for hundreds, if not thousands of years, anything pertaining to spirituality is very much discouraged.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the New Age was created, so they could corrupt any awakening.
Mm-hmm.
But it all comes down to spirituality. It's all about your soul, your spirit.
Yeah. And we are going to get into that too, because it is about that. And, I like this slide about anarchy because, I've been saying for a while now, I'm an anarchist, right? And the only reason I can say that is because I don't have a master over me. And this brings it up. And also when you get into the word archon, right?
Yep.
The master ruler and the archonic influence. And we're not going to go into that today. And that's, of course, been talked about all over the internet. But this is when we start to tear apart words and we take them apart and we look at the etymology of words and we don't take the imposed upon you definition of a term, right? You say anarchy to most people and they think it's chaos, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just not that, It means that it's a sovereignty. It's the part about there's no rulers, there's no masters.
No, it means that you are your own master.
Exactly. And
the one ruler over you is yourself.
Right.
You are your king, queen, monarch, prime minister, president, whatever. You are your own master.
Exactly. And
we're all born equal, people.
Yep. And this is a fundamental truth. This is a fundamental truth. And it's to be your own master, though, is need to become that master of yourself, right? So like one of the things I say sometimes is I sit on my own throne.
Yeah.
I sit on my own throne. That does not mean I am a royalty ruling over anybody else, because I have mastered aspects of myself enough to be able to say that publicly.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Doesn't mean like I'm finished here. It doesn't mean I'm better than anybody else. It doesn't mean that I know more than anybody else. It doesn't mean anything. It just means my inner journey has taken me to the place that I can say that. And when I accept that, when things throw me off of that, then I know that that's the next place I got to work on. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, awesome picture here. Ominous. Look at it. Look at it. I don't know how many people have really spent time looking at the way Rome is laid out, the way, Washington, D.C. is laid out, where the city of London is laid out. Well, how are these cities developed? What is that obelisk in the middle? Who are those beings looking down over? Right? What are they ruling? What are they obscured there? Okay? And in some ways, it's true. All roads lead to Rome. Especially about what we're talking about right now. Okay. Now, I didn't know this going into preparing this PowerPoint. I didn't realize this, and this is where we get into the trust by decree. What does that mean? The trust by decree. Who decreed this?
Let's have a look at the Pope.
Yeah. So we have in 1302. This was Pope Bonifacio VIII who created in that the Unum Sanctum, okay? The first and largest express trust, okay? What did this set up? They set up jurisdiction over the air, the land, the sea. This is where Admiralty Law starts to come in, right?
Yeah.
Okay? And look what they gave jurisdiction over. Living and dead souls, spirits, angels, demons, ideas, global nature are controlled by the Pope and his appointees. Okay? This is done by decree. Okay? Who gave them that right? Okay? And the sea jurisdiction, all vessels, mariners, sailors, merchants, creatures of the sea, international in nature, are controlled by the British monarchs. Okay? This is a reality, folks, okay? I mean, a reality in the sense that they set it up this way, okay? The land jurisdiction, all resources of the land, including people, animal, plants, minerals, are national in nature and are controlled by the Spanish king if there is one. Okay? Each jurisdiction has its own law forms, okay? I mean, what mind created this, friends? What mind can yeah, what mind, okay, could set this up that by decree we rule over you in such a manner? And it's not even ruling over you, we own you.
Yeah, you know what, the most puzzling thing is that nobody ever said a word about it.
No.
I mean, this has never ever been repealed.
No. And it's not going to be repealed.
No.
It's not going to be, because who would repeal it? Those that are the beneficiaries, which we'll get into in a minute, of this, they knew what they were doing. I mean, is this not demonic, friends? I mean, really look at it. Is this not demonic? Who are these beings that set this up? Ask that question. It's profound. And God we trust. Who is this God in who we trust?
I've always wondered about that.
Right? Okay, so this is important. Trusts are created when one party, the donor, places assets in the care of another party, the trustee, for the benefit of a third party, the beneficiary. So here we have God, the donor, gave Earth the asset to Adam, the trustee, for all future generations, us, the beneficiary. All right? That would be actually if we were living in natural law.
Yes, and the legal system has completely skewed this because, as I said earlier, when you go to a court and you don't liberate them from that notion, they presume that you are the trustee.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in reality, you will always be the beneficiary.
Right. Right. So this is, again, it's this twisting of this legalese terms, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I even rebelling on like who writes stuff like this? Who decides things like this? You know, it is so twisted. So the trust is the largest corporate conglomerate and the trust directorate on the earth with 4 administrative hubs operated as city-states. Now, for anybody that doesn't know this, hasn't studied it, these city-states are countries unto themselves. Washington, D.C. is the District of Columbia, operates as a separate entity from the United States of America, as does the City of London, as does the Vatican City. I don't know, Claudia, if you want to talk about this a little bit. We did talk about this just between you and I the other day.
I would say it's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, we all know the Vatican deals with anything religious, which is, you probably heard that just yesterday, I think, the Pope met one of the highest Sunni Muslim imams and welcomed him to the Vatican. And I mean, I'm sure Netanyahu has visited the Vatican, or the Pope has been to Israel. The Queen and the Pope meet. So it's the Vatican that is basically the controller of all religious belief systems, whether you're Muslim or Jew or Catholic or other Christian or whatever.
Okay.
If you don't think the Pope is your boss, then you may really want to look into this.
Right. So here I want to get into a little layer of the obfuscation of how most people view these types of things. Now, I can see right now when you're saying that the Sunni, you know, high Sunni, blah, 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 right, meets with the Pope, right? So they make that news, right? And a lot of people were so entrained the way we view things, right, through these certain lenses that have been, you know, given to us, that most people celebrate, oh, it's so lovely, the religious are coming together, right?
They've never really been apart.
Exactly. I mean, so this is the thing, and then most people are satisfied with that, right?
Yeah.
Oh, right. The Muslims and the Catholics are getting together. Isn't that cute? I'm sorry, I have to be a little facetious here, but you know, I mean, you know, without ever looking deeper into it, right? Because when we still are giving our authority away to anyone else, that's how we're going to see the world, the way they want us to see it.
Well, yes. I mean, religion always has been a blueprint for mind control, no matter what belief system you look at.
Right. Right. So, you know, again, it's like waking up to deeper layers here. And, you know, this is the bottom line. We are all a part of it. We like it or not, and we have been for the past 700 years. Okay? We all are a part of it. Why are Claudia and I speaking today? Because we've been extracting ourselves from this. right? But I am registered. My birth was registered. I registered my children's birth.
Yeah, same here.
All of these things, when enough of us have enough consciousness, when enough of us are ready to unplug completely from the system, then it'll change. It's not going to change from inside, friends. It's not going to. You start to really realize how well this is constructed, what a system they put into place. They will loop you back into the system. I swear, if you go after the system from within the system, it'll loop you back in. And you will believe it's changing, but it's not.
The satanic system we live in is not redeemable in any way you look at it.
No.
And the only way for it to be gone is for people to wake up en masse and stop withdrawing. Because if you pay attention to them, if you get scared that a cop stops you for speeding, if you get scared that somebody comes after you because you owe $1,000 in credit cards, you are feeding the system. Mm-hmm. Energy flows where attention goes. It's a known fact. Mm-hmm. So withdraw, make baby steps. Start with one little thing and take it from there. But do something if you want this world to survive.
Yeah. And that becomes that moral choice that we have to make, and baby steps is the only way to go. I mean, well, maybe some people have taken giant leaps, right? Usually when you take a giant leap, there's a big jaw ready to swallow you up, because the system does not really appreciate you any longer, putting it mildly, right? But the first step is consciousness. The first step is always consciousness, but then it has to be followed by action for it to become a reality here. And a lot of people just get lost in consciousness, and they don't be real, do. Okay. So I'm just having this up here, and I don't follow, I don't live in the United States. I do understand a lot's going on there, with the idea of the republic, but real men and real women. All right. That's all it takes, real men and real women. Right? Stop being the straw men. Stop, the amount of ordinances, codes, and it's worse every day. It's worse every day. For anybody that lives in a third world country, they are locking down people every day. I don't know how many new laws they put on the books every day. I do know from being in third world countries and having a little bit to do with the legal system, the laws change every day. It's virtually impossible to keep up with it unless you're a lawyer or a judge, right? And even then, they don't even know. They're inventing it as they go. It's crazy.
Yep.
So this is the bottom. This is what, the legal name fraud. This is a big, big subject here, because what's really going on the minute you register a birth is that you're giving that life, whatever that life will have as a resource, that's its life energy, its life blood, over to the system. The minute you register a birth, you are sold, bought, and traded. The debt system. You are in debt from the minute you're born. You've been traded and bought and sold.
And you lose your name. Mm-hmm. Because the legal name that is on your birth certificate is then no longer yours. And every time you give that name, when a cop asks you, when a bank asks you, when a teacher asks you, it doesn't matter. Every time you give that name, you are instantly in dishonor, because you've broken somebody's copyright, that of the crown, who owns the copyright to your name. Mm-hmm. Now let that sink in for a while.
I know. And
this is huge.
It is huge, and it's really difficult to get into. I mean, it is really difficult to really understand that. But that's the minute. And now not only are you given a legal name, you're given a number. In the United States, at least, the minute you're born now, you have your Social Security number. It used to be that when you decided to go work, that you'd go apply for a Social Security number. Now it's your ID number. And that's happening everywhere. right?
Yep.
Not only are you now named, but you're numbered. You're tagged.
And you're neither the number nor the name.
Right. Right. But virtually like the narrowing of the gate sort of thing here, the bars are getting, not only are they getting closer together, actually, if we really get into it, how subtly it's been woven, this prison, that you can't walk through it very easily. It's not like you can break out of this jail with just, one fell swoop here. They've made layers and layers and layers onto this.
Mm-hmm.
So like you were saying earlier, just, one step at a time. And the first steps are accepting the consciousness that has to look into this clearly for what it is.
Yes. We need to first realize the truth and then apply it and then internalize it until it is your nature.
Right, because what is the personal
That's the only
honor?
way to get out.
Right, and who do you dishonor first? I mean, see, this is the question here: is what is personal honor and responsibility when confronted with the truth? Right? Do we wash it aside? Do we put it under the rug? Do we say I can't do anything about it? All of our responses mount to something, right? But the first person you dishonor is yourself. It's always the first person that you dishonor, right? So the first step is confronting this. I think we've already kind of pretty much gone through this. Claudia?
Yeah.
We have on this slide for those that want to look at it later. We'll make this PowerPoint available if anybody wants to use it. But we have, Kate of Gaia. And I understand that she's just, done the most extraordinary job of untangling this mess. And
she's done an incredible job.
Right.
And I would say she's the only one on this entire planet who has done it so thoroughly.
Mm-hmm.
There are others who know a lot, who share a lot, but nobody the way she does it.
Wonderful.
And has been doing it for years.
That's beautiful. Yeah, so look, I mean, just the one word registered. Okay. Regere, from the Latin, to rule, to govern. Okay. Regis, rex, regis, king, royal. You register, you're registering yourself to the king. You're giving your right away in the beginning. You're giving yourself, your child, you're giving it to the state, to an authority, a fictional entity. If we really knew that, would you consciously give your child to an entity? But we do it all the time through the child protective services, social services, welfare system, you name it, right? Now, don't even get us started on the educational system. Oh, you mean the indoctrination system?
No, I'd like to add here that the birth certificate is the reason that states can impose their rules over any child. That's why California can get away with mandating vaccination, because you don't own your child. If the state says, I'm going to kill your child because we need new victims to feed Satan, is absolutely nothing you can do.
Right. Okay, so there we go. Is there justice in our system? No. And what you just said, Claudia, is not far from the truth. And
no, I know it is the truth, because I know of cases where a couple of children whose birth was not registered.
Mm-hmm.
They were returned by social services within 12 hours.
Wow. See, power is knowledge. Knowledge is power. And we also know, how, you see, a lot of times what happens is that, we're so diffused and we're so fractured and we're so, separated from everything else going on that we don't get into the whole reality here. But how many cases of child protection services are out there of a childhood abuse, or selling the child, or giving them over to satanic abuses, or social services? These places are replete with predatory agents.
Oh, that's the only reason
pedophiles.
Social services exist, and so-called child protection services exist.
Exactly.
There is no other reason.
And even that makes it to the mainstream media. Even that, these wild cases where it gets so wild that they have to report it. what goes on that's not seen and not ever reported onto your TV screen out there?
Yeah, I mean, the English mainstream media has been quite full of it for a while now.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, they report it as lack of efficiency amongst the departments, which is bullshit, of course.
Right.
But it's, I mean, the simple fact that it has made and continuously made the mainstream news just shows how rampant this is.
Exactly. And so they have to report it because it is so obvious. And yet what it really comes down to, bottom line, this is the message that Claudia and I and others are giving over and over again. Bottom line is because we've given ourselves away. And there will be that predatory, satanistic, archonic force will feed on you as long as you give yourself away. So this thing has grown. This great hydra has grown. It's going to implode. It's going to consume itself. Ultimately it will. But meanwhile, we have to do our part here by speaking our truth and giving this information out freely. May somebody else wake up out there. May another person take the next step to their own sovereignty here. And this is where we really, Claudia, I mean, I know you and I have shared so deeply in this, and this actually goes beyond whatever our words can be. See, that's the thing about natural law and truth, is that one doesn't have to speak a word to know it. We share this. So, what was set up in the United States of America, what is so violated? That we hold these truths to be self-evident means that the self is evident. They're evidence, it's truth, that all humans are created equal, that they are endowed by their creator with a certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That has been so decimated and convoluted and covered over and distorted. We don't even know what that word means anymore. So for Claudia and I, coming together and working the way we do, we know this. It's like it's self-evident to us that to do no harm and that love is the whole of the law and that we are the law. It's all we really need to know, but one needs to internalize it and know it beyond any shadow of a doubt. And when that happens in an individual, you become invincible. It doesn't matter if they put me in jail. It doesn't matter if they take my life, because I will not move off of my truth. I will stand in my truth, period.
Exactly.
And even saying that, the voice behind my head says, you may be tested. And I say, yes, I know. I will be tested. But there comes a point, friends, that you actually know this so deeply because you're your own self, right? And really, what do I see around me every day, Claudia? Is life, like the big capital life, right? Life is itself.
Yes.
In everything, right? And yet we've taken, our laws and our consumerism, and we've decimated life on the planet. And one does not have to take life to have life. Life is given, as is liberty and is happiness.
It's in the nature of nature to give.
Yes. Like extraordinarily abundant. So that's probably a topic for another day. Okay. So here we are, friends. What do you choose? I mean, the law is applicable to a human being, okay? I stand alone in my own truth, in my own light, period. I don't need to know any more than that, actually. That gives me life, liberty, happiness, right? Expression, creativity, imagination. That's all I need to know, right? And yet then we have the cartoon court of the legal system, right? And it's the drama kings and the queens and the audience that looks on and follows that drama and laughs and ooh and ahs, while they're doing their performance, right? It's the Jekyll and the Hyde. It's all those things, right? So This is just, to me, this slide is very simple. It doesn't need a lot of explanation, but really, we're human beings. We're not images and masks. We're not to be bought and saved, you know, and yet, unfortunately, much of humanity is still sitting there in that courtroom believing somebody else has the ruler over them. I don't know if we need to talk about this.
I think this one is really, really self-explanatory.
Right.
It's an excellent image.
Mm-hmm. Right. And as you said, you know, it gets simple, thou shalt not steal.
Yeah.
Do no harm, right? It's just simple. A right is an action that causes no harm or violation of another. Your rights are an attribute that constitute your property. My property is me.
Exactly.
My property is me, right? I don't even, you know, really get into ownership anymore because that's another ship, right? If I own something, I actually am steward of it because I will leave it. I do not own it. I do not own the earth. I do not own.
I was going to say, you do not own anything.
Right.
You own no thing.
Yeah. Right. And if I, you know, because if I own something, right, then I will, ultimately, I will get into a battle to prove my ownership of it because it's within that system, right? And this is why on my own personal level, I've walked away from so much, right? And an action that is wrong is something that violates another. It's a theft of the rights or property of another being. And this goes all the way through our lives, friends, in every action we take. You know, and we do get to a place where we've cleared out enough where we understand this, where we understand within ourselves, or within ourselves we know this, basically, that there's no question there. I don't sit around going, is that right or wrong? Right? You know, there's a knowingness that kicks in there, right? And I changed this, Claudia, excuse me if I did, but I put do no harm.
Okay.
And that's the law. And then we have a legal system. It's an accumulation of millions of regulations, rules, and statutes that apply to anyone dealing in commerce. And we've already established that we are chattel when we have a birth certificate, when we register. We are now in commercial law. We're bought, sold, traded. Okay, we are bought, sold, and traded for profit of a corporation. And the United States, we've established, is a corporation.
Oh, so are all countries.
Exactly. They're incorporated, right? They've taken on the fictition of a body. They're an entity that's taken on the fiction of a body. Incorporation.
A dead entity.
Yep. I like this. I mean, I do, because I recognize my soul journey. You know, I'm fortunate person here that's speaking right now, because I've gone through enough of my own inner journey to understand where I come in. You know, and there is within all of us, you know, the human being will rebel against anything that limits it. A being will rebel against anything that limits it. But in order, it's not just enough to rebel, which I was such a rebel, now come into the place of I am. So if you are hungry, I will offer food. If you are thirsty, I will offer water. If you are cold, I will offer warmth. This is the return, right? If you are in need and ask, I will give. And if you're in trouble and ask, I will help. And ask. So this is another deeper level of something very deeply fundamental in us, because many people say, well, how can we live without rules and regulations? We need to be ruled from outside because there's always those that will violate. Well, yes, there are. And yet we can right that by being right ourselves.
Exactly.
Right? If I get into a situation where somebody steals from me or somebody violates me in any way, I am equally on the other side of that. I do not, it's so I will not go to victim. I have to write it myself so that it can write on the other side. I have to set it right on my own course, steer my own course, make my own standards, enforce it within myself. And by doing that, I'm actually opening up and holding the space for the person or that violated me. That's how it really works. I mean, that's another fundamental.
Yes, I would like to add here that the concept of reward and punishment,
oh yes,
is a purely satanic one.
It is.
You and absolutely nobody has a right to punish another. And the same really goes for reward. Do good to yourself, yes, of course. Gift somebody else, but don't make it a reward.
Right? Again, look at the words we use. Right? Do we not ourselves get entrapped in that? I punish ourselves and reward ourselves. You see, there's a mindset of duality here that's really difficult sometimes to get through. How many people say, oh, I rewarded myself, right?
Oh,
well, if you're really in natural law, if you're really in the fields of expression of abundance, you don't need to be rewarded. You
have every right to pleasure of any kind. If it pleases you to eat pizza, do so. You don't need an excuse. Never, ever. As long as you don't steal, you need no excuse.
Mm-mm.
And if you steal, then you're in trouble anyway.
Exactly.
You don't need punishment because nature provides that.
Right. Yes. And you really violated yourself right there. You know, and that's why that's why I talk so much about getting back into that aspect of yourself. And you are everything and everybody. The way you treat yourself is so important.
Yeah.
You know, do you honor yourself? So, yeah. And then, you know, I mean, fear of punishment. I think most people, whether they're conscious of it or not, are in that state of mind, in that state right now.
Oh, yeah.
And you talked about the police force, you know, all of those things, you know, it's very, very prevalent. Okay. I realize how much we have more to go here. Okay. So let's just, you know, religious systems systematically use law to rule over. All right. This is very, again, something that really needs to be looked at. I don't know how much we want to spend time on this, Claudia, because I know we didn't want to get...
No, well, I mean, it's self-explanatory, and we've given the terms, and anyone interested can look it up to, you know, find out more detail. So let's just move on. Yeah,
just want to say, you know, that there is this thing that the religions have put out there called original sin, right? I would suggest to anybody that they really start to explore that concept and how it got put into our belief system. Basically embedded also, along with your birth certificate, you get original sin, right? You know, I mean, okay, not only, you know, and therefore a belief is underlying it all, that a human being needs to be ruled from above. In this case, we're being ruled from below, you know, and it needs to have guidelines and judges and religious figures and all of these things. And we bought that. So it's like, that is a really good place to start. Original sin, you know, and when you start to look into that, and again, that's a broader topic, or it goes into a deeper area of how that got embedded in us and why it did. It has a lot to do with the divine feminine, but we'll leave that for another time. Okay, so Then we're going to talk a little bit about black magic. And I know, Claudia, that you have things to say about that. But if we just look at the points here, the Vatican doesn't acknowledge human rights unless they are in accordance with the church doctrine. Okay, in other words, do what we say. We're the church fathers. Okay? And one cannot then appeal to these rights of man in order to oppose the interventions of the magisterium. Is that how you say it?
I would pronounce it Latin, so magisterium.
Yeah, okay.
Whatever.
Right. So basically what's been used here, and if you go take that word apart, the magisterium, it is the use of magic. Okay? It's an agency, all right, that has learned how to use alchemy, magic, and everything that they have all this knowledge hidden away in the vaults of the Vatican, and they know what they're doing, and they know how to use it, and they've used it to chain us to belief systems that are the farthest thing from our truth. So we're going to look at these men for a minute with their wigs.
I call them cosplayers.
Right? Okay. They sit on chairs or thrones. They sit above you in a court of law. Right?
They dress up.
They dress up. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
They play dress up like, little children.
Exactly. They put on their medallions and their, yeah, right. So here you have immediately you're coming into something. And what is this Baron of Coleridge? I just love this, I must lay down the law as I understand it and as I have read it in books of authority. So even this person who has authority, you go into a court of law and you feel like that person has authority over you. Look at them, right? And where did he learn it from? Books of authority. Whose authority? We already established that. If we want to go back and look a little deeper, back to when the trust was set up in 1302. It started this process of writing these books of authority. But who gave them authority? Unfortunately, we did, by bowing down to it for so long. Another one. Very, very special, this Jesuit priest here, right?
Yeah, right.
Right? Why do priests dress in black robes? Claudia, maybe you want to talk about this, because this is another thing, is like to swear is synonymous with a curse.
Well, according to the New Testament, Jesus calls swearing, as in swearing an oath, evil.
Mm-hmm.
I read some history about that when the Bible first became available to the masses a few hundred years ago. People realized that passage which we got here about swearing, and they were here in England. They were extremely miffed because nobody had ever told them that Jesus said, "Do not swear."
Mm-hmm.
This is apparently how the Quaker movement originally started,
Mm-hmm.
because Quakers refused to, swear oaths once they read that in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how, basically, when you use swear words or curse words or cuss words, it's basically the same meaning. I think I mentioned that in my last bite-size audio.
Right. Which is beautiful, by the way. That's really wonderful. So, yeah. So, and why do we swear obedience? And, if you go into even, deeper into it, you're always swearing obedience to this God, right? Who has many names. Primary amongst us is Yahweh, right? And so we're hook, line, and sinker into this thought form, right? We don't
Oh, yeah,
go into it deep enough. We can say that modern religions, we have to swear oaths. We swear, take vows. We, put our hands on Bibles. We do all sorts of things. Even like you said, if you swear at somebody else, I can swear by going, oh, fuck that. This one thing, it's an expression, but when you swear something at another being, when you curse them.
Yeah, that's a huge difference.
It's a huge difference, right? But these are things that are still so commonplace, right? That we've accepted them.
Mm-hmm.
Even if, and I go deep enough to, really even watch my thoughts. I have been indoctrinated into several different, especially a cult at one point, so those are deeply embedded thought patterns.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, thought is how everything in this universe starts.
Mm-hmm.
The first principle is, the first Hermetic principle is the universe is mental.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that doesn't mean it's not. It means everything starts with a thought.
Right. So think of, within the, the litanies within the Catholic Church, right? Right. I mean, these are repetitive, rosaries, prayers, all of these things that are repetitive. They get so deeply buried in our subconscious, probably through lifetimes. I won't say probably, definitely through lifetimes, that it takes a great deal of consciousness to catch them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So why are all these now, while they can be used in a certain way, mandalas, but that's not the word, mantras and things of that nature. But ultimately a mantra or a prayer, should be something that if we ever use it, that we rise ourselves up above it without the need of it. But people become dependent on these things. And I even say right here, be very, very aware of all of that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying to anybody don't say the prayers or the mantras or whatever, but, if you go into a mass in a Catholic church and there's chanting something, a litany in Latin, how much of that is going into your subconscious?
If you do that, I mean, run the other way.
Right. I mean, consciousness is really where it's at. If something otherwise is coming into you at the subconscious level. That's why nature is such the best teacher there ever was.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't have that embedded in her. Yeah, here we are, another one.
Well, I mean, that's really the crux of it, isn't it? When you, I believe there are probably movies that show some scenes where priests summon demons.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've ever been to a court, I mean, you cannot not see the similarities.
Mm-hmm. Right. And yet here you have to look at the individual that's doing the summoning, right?
The judge.
Yes, right. And who is his master, right? Because
exactly,
he's doing the bidding of some other unseen entity. And this goes really deep into the world of black magic. And again, I think it's going to become a topic of another conversation that we'll have. But it's like, that's what one has to pierce, penetrate, look through these facades. The masquerade. This is a masquerade. This is, I think Lily called it the comic book world, right?
Yes.
Right? And yet we're, to the most part, people are still subjected. They're still subjects to it. In other words, they're not claiming their own authority. They're not questioning it enough. I know most people, you put them in front of a man that looks like that, their inner response is going to be to cower.
Yeah. And, in a way, that is understandable.
Of course.
Because they do kind of imbue fear simply through their appearance. And also, I mean, their own evil oozes out of them because they don't have a hold on it.
Right.
So that has to be quite, fear-inducing.
Yeah.
And they make the most of that, and it takes a hell of a lot of courage to actually stand up to them.
Yep. And we know in past times, anyone that stood up to these priests and judges, and we talk about the Inquisition or all of the different ways, and it's still going on all over the world right now, are put to death.
Yeah.
It's just like, so it does take courage. That's why, one does get to the place where you say, I will give my life for my truth. Doesn't matter anymore. Okay, we're reaching the end here. So this is really important, the word individuated. I see that now coming up all over the place in the people's writings in the alternative community. That yes, we are individuated spirits. That means as an individuated spiritual being, freedom, right? But it is an internal process.
It is entirely internal.
It's know thyself.
Yeah.
And so, and the first thing is to realize that there is not a rule, an order, an authority outside of you that can give you freedom. Nothing can give you freedom. You either take it. I like your little saying on your Skype, Claudia. It's like, sovereignty is not given, it is taken.
Well, it is. I mean, nobody is in a position to give it to you, for starters. Those who most people deem powerful would not give it to you if they could. So you've got to grab it when you see it.
Yeah.
And that is, I cannot stress that enough, because I've been asked so many times, how do you do it? And I said, well, look in the mirror constantly and find fault, and then rectify it. It's, it becomes natural after a while when you get over the ego constantly either telling you can't be possibly that bad, or the ego telling you you're so fucking useless, you might as well go and kill yourself. It's a process. It's a very deep process, but anyone can get there if they only want to. And looking for truth is always the first step. And in order to want truth, you have to be truthful with yourself.
Exactly. So really radical responsibility goes radical honesty, self-honesty. You can't have that. And it's something that, I wrote here, being self-reliant on all dynamics is radical responsibility. It means like, I can't with one person be one way, or in one situation act one way and then act in another way, right? Nor can I take from another being, right? I need to find that place where I'm reliant on myself within myself. I'm sourcing myself from within. And that's the only way we can get out of this vampiric realm that we've been so enmeshed in for so long. So, and in that way, when you start to source yourself from within yourself, that means that no longer can anything feed on you either. Right? And so you start to recognize that anything that's attracted to you is either there for its own healing or its own rise of consciousness. Right? And so you're not in fear any longer. You're not even in doubt any longer. And that's becomes what we wrote here, love is a state of being. You become the state of yourself, of your own being.
Yep. With no judgment.
Exactly. For yourself or for others. And even being self-honest with yourself, Claudia, that look in the mirror part, like really loving yourself too. It's being honest enough to love yourself, because love doesn't really have an agenda. It's a force, right? And so it doesn't judge.
No, that's what the final sentence here is all about. Love is a state of being. You cannot love somebody else if you don't love yourself. You cannot be love if you don't love yourself.
And that is a radiant, self-evident field. It is. It's radiant and self-evident. You can't fake it either. And you know that. And I know that. And anybody that looks deep enough knows that you can't fake it. You know,
Yeah.
I've always known when I was faking it. So a lot of that comes from, you know, retrospective, looking backwards, you know, looking back and seeing things that, and learning and developing wisdom. You know, that's another thing that, you know, wisdom is a whole another topic here. But that comes with being truthful to yourself, with yourself. So I love this, Claudia. I had to put it in here. Yeah.
We can't do without felines, can we?
Cannot do without them. And 2 times feline love. And I wrote that on a Facebook, and it got picked up by the Mad Hatter, and I just love it, because actually this is walking the road of freedom.
Yes.
Right? You know, beauty, truth is beautiful. It's radiant. It's knowable.
It's very empowering too.
Empowering. Once you're walking the road of truth and sovereignty, you really don't doubt things any longer. You know, and if doubt comes in or shadows you or clouds you for a while, you have enough force inside yourself to find out where it's coming from. Anyways, so, and I end with this image, and it's one of my, for us, Claudia, you know, it's like raising the truth, the sword of truth, the sword of justice. Okay, it's a light. It's not detrimental to anybody. It's a light. It's a torch. It's a bearing the sword of truth is the greatest honor. It's the greatest gift. It's the most beautiful thing we are.
Yes, and once you master your words, then that's when you have the sword.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Claudia, for sharing this moment with me, and
thank you,
everyone, and for hi, doll. Just come back for a minute and sit with you, and thank you. Really, I mean, I know your research and your own personal journey has been a great inspiration for myself and for others, Claudia. And so,
I'm glad.
Yeah, so thanks for sharing that, and you know, thank everybody else that's in the collaboration that goes on here, and I invite anybody too that's. I know there's a lot of folks out there right now that are looking to give voice to truth or give expression to truth. You know, just encourage that. I think that's been the biggest part of Claudia and I's journey together. And then also by coming forward is to encourage others to step that one next step out of their own fears or their own limits and just express it freely. You know, you've got to kind of cut these tentacles. And as you do, and as you move forward, you move into your truth, you move into yourself, you move into your authentic self, and then hold that ground.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? And there's, you know, there will come times when we are always, well, I'm challenged, you're challenged, right? I mean, there isn't a day that goes by that I'm not challenged in some way. But I've learned that. I've learned to hold my ground and stand in my truth no matter what. Does not mean I'm right. Okay, this is very different. It doesn't mean I'm right or I'm wrong, but I'm standing in my truth, right? And as that reverberates through me, I see the field around me changes. It becomes more beautiful. It becomes more full. It becomes more awesome. It's more creative. It's that expansion of the self, but not the ego self, the expansion of me and you, because me and Claudia are the same being ultimately. We source from the same place. She expresses it in her extraordinary, beautiful way. I express it in mine. I accept the expression in others. And, you know, and it gets to that point of like honesty. Be honest to yourself.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Word, darling. I adore. Another big hug, and you know, so we'll end it here, and let's get this one out. And you know, we keep touching on more subjects that I'd like to dig a little deeper into, and I think we will.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a feeling we may.
Guaranteed, darling. I love you. Love everybody.
Love
Bye for
you.
now.
Bye.